Hey folks, we're going to get started in just about a minute here, so hang tight. All right, folks, let's get started. Welcome everybody to the Modern Apps in the Accounting Ecosystem webinar, your guide to choosing and reevaluating apps for your firm. Happy to be here. I'm your host, Dan Shively. Thank you for jumping on today. We've gathered a panel of the experts who live at the intersection of in-practice needs and delivery of solutions. So we're excited to get going here and share our expertise with you. We're going to talk about creating the most efficient app stack, achieving ROI on the spend of subscription, and building a practice that will be scalable into the future. So excited to get going here. Little housekeeping to start with. Please close down any apps or windows that you have open on your computer. During these webinars, there's a lot of information being exchanged. There's transference issues, so please close it down so you get the speed that you need and you can focus on the webinar. Also, please be cognizant that we're going to send you a copy of the recording afterwards, so if you want to take a closer look at anything that was discussed during the webinar, we'll go ahead and send you a copy, so just be aware of that and look out for it. And during the webinar, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things specifically. So if you have a question along the way, if you want to do a little bit deeper dive into any of the specific subjects, please ask us questions as we go in the GoToWebinar panel, and we'll go through and answer all of them at the end. And when you ask your question on the GoToWebinar panel, please state your name and where you're from, so we can say, Jenny from North Dakota has a question, and we'll go ahead and answer it so that the rest of the audience has a context from which to understand the answers. So let's kind of dig into it. Here's the agenda. We're going to start with introductions with myself, with Esther and Nick. We're going to talk about how to choose and reevaluate apps for your accounting practice. We're going to talk about problems that apps should be solving on a daily basis for you and your team. We're going to talk about the best way to maximize direct and indirect ROI from your app stack. And we're going to talk about easy ways to create efficient workflows for your clients. And we're going to have a Q&A at the end and talk about the highlights. So I'll start with an introduction from myself. My name's Dan Shively. I'm with Spotlight Reporting. I am the account manager that is in charge of the eastern half of North America. So I work the eastern half of America and Canada, and I work with firms, accounting firms, and bookkeepers every day to deploy advisory and get their clients the reporting and forecasting solutions that they need. I've been with Spotlight about 2 years. I started out setting meetings, as a lot of sales careers do start, and I worked my way up. I learned the tool, I learned the industry, and now I have achieved the rank of account manager in the eastern half of North America. So I've had my own journey, just working with a lot of different directors and accountants to deploy advisory and get them producing reports and forecasts for the bank and board situations or advisory situations for their clients that they might need. So now I'm going to toss it to Esther. Maybe you could talk about yourself, your story, how you got to where you are, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Dan. Before I get to myself, I'd like to take a minute because I would be remiss if I didn't call out something. In our accounting and bookkeeping community, we had a very big loss a few days ago. We lost one of our own, Elaine Orr of balancesheets.ca from Richmond, Ontario, which is in the Ottawa area. She passed away on Friday. She was a champion of the app ecosystem and cloud accounting. She was a friend and mentor to many, and she was also just a ball of fire. I've been in a fog since I found out just about 24 hours ago, and I couldn't say anything on social media because I just didn't know what to say. And I wish there was something I could say or do that would just make this better, but I can't. But I couldn't be on this call and not say anything because this was near and dear to her heart. So Elaine, you will be missed. Anyway, I will now try and pull myself together. My name is Esther Friedberg Harp. I have an account, a QuickBooks consulting practice in the Toronto area. I am a certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor. I'm advanced certified in QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. I'm actually certified in 3 countries, in Canada, the US, and the UK. I've been at this a very long time, since the mid-90s, when there was only what we now refer to as QuickBooks Desktop. And most of my clients are actually larger clients, because as my practice grew, so did my average client base, my average client size. And now I have QuickBooks Online clients as well. I do a lot of training and creation of certification courses for Intuit. And about 1.5 years ago, I not only talked the talk, but I also walked the walk, and I converted my own set of books to QuickBooks Online. And that's where things really just completely exploded, but in a good way. I created my own app stack. I brought on the apps that worked well for me, and all of a sudden the ROI was just tremendous. I am making more money than ever before, and I have more time than ever before to either devote to my clients, my practice, or things outside my practice. So I am a living, breathing testament to what the app stack can do for a practice.
Thanks, Esther. Thank you for the call out there and the introduction. Definitely looking forward to plunging into your well of knowledge and using your expertise to help educate our audience here. We also have on the call with, I'm pretty excited to speak with Nick Barnard here. He is the new partner consultant at Receipt Bank out of Washington, D.C. Nick, can you give us a little intro?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dan. So as Dan mentioned, I'm a new partner consultant here at Receipt Bank. I work all of North America, so US and Canada. I've been here for about 2 years, and I've seen some pretty incredible things. My job here is to bring on new partners, walk them through and introduce them not only to Receipt Bank, but also the cloud journey as a whole. I've seen some incredible changes in the industry, I have to say. I've worked for a lot of tech companies before, and I've never seen anything like it in terms of year to year, the type of applications that are coming out, the type of innovation I've seen. It's just an impressive thing to kind of stand back and watch, and I'm happy to be a part of it. So hopefully I'll be able to share some of those experiences with everyone today, and I'm really excited to get into this.
Great, thanks, Nick. All right, guys, let's jump into it. The first talking point we're going to use is how to choose and reevaluate apps for your accounting practice. And for this, I'd like to start with Esther, because you started in the mid-90s. You said you've had your own cloud journey. Can you tell us a little bit about what your process was like when you were evaluating tool sets when you first were building your practice? How it's now, and I can go back. We can segment this out. So, what was it like when you were first building your practice? What was your process like?
The equivalent of like rocks and bear skins. Everything was like, it's like silos of information. It was, I mean, yes, you try to be as computerized as possible, and everything was in Word or Excel or, you know, your email client or something. So you're trying to be as technical as possible. And I thought I was being so slick and smooth. I had my own client interview sheet, which to some degree I still have. It's kind of its descendant I have today, but I've got it in another format. But I had created my typical questions, and so that was my questionnaire for new clients, and that was in Excel format. But nothing was connected, absolutely nothing. So I had just everything was paper. Everything was paper, and if I was with it enough, then yes, I would back things up on floppy or an extra hard drive or something. Eventually, there were cloud drives, of course, but it was awful. It was just awful. I think about all the trees that I killed. I mean, it's just disgusting.
Definitely. And so now that we've evolved from the killing trees historical process, what trends have you seen, and how has that process evolved, and what are the descendants of those processes starting to look like now?
Well, I'm going to call out my dear friend Jennifer Baldick. I don't know if she's on. I think she registered for today. And if you're on, Jennifer, I love you. You are definitely an inspiration. She's pretty much paperless, and she became my inspiration. And she's one of the reasons that I converted to QBO when I did. The other thing was that I was deathly ill and I couldn't leave the house, so I had to do something to keep me busy. But the fact was, I thought, well, Jennifer can do it. I can do it too. And I was converting all my clients to QBO. I thought, I can be my own client. Hello. So the fact was, I thought, this is ridiculous. One good fire and everything's lost, right? One good flood and everything's lost. So I just realized that even if I don't have a fire or a flood, eventually I will never have enough room to house all the records that are being stapled together. And it was just ridiculous. Nobody has a house big enough. Nobody does. Well, maybe some people do, but they're not running QuickBooks if they do. But in any case, it was just insane. You can't keep up with that. So if everything is in the cloud and properly, and it's just properly attached to the right thing so you can find it, hello, there it is. And if the government is okay with it, then that's perfect. Why should you have an envelope filled with receipts and stapled to your MasterCard bill for that month? That's insanity. That's like so last millennium.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure that you've seen over the years how your client base has changed based on the solutions that you're able to provide them. I wanted to ask Nick, so when you're assisting a new client that you're onboarding, what is your discovery process like in terms of evaluating what solution they'll need for their app stack as a whole?
Absolutely. So of course, I think the biggest thing when evaluating an application is just making sure it makes sense for the practice, making sure that it integrates with their existing systems. I think a big piece is the partner, or rather the program behind it. So if you call it a partnership program or an accountant's program, bookkeeper's program, whatever it might be, I think the application is one side of it, but also the human element and the support is another piece, making sure everything is implemented the right way, making sure that the application itself is intuitive, easy to understand, and something that you can really believe in and scale across your business would be probably the key pieces I look for when speaking to an accountant or bookkeeper.
Got it. And when you're speaking with them, how do you help them determine necessarily what is a solution they might have implemented that isn't the right solution so that you can make the correct recommendation? So in other words, how do you help your new clients determine that the solution that they have in place isn't necessarily the most efficient or right one?
Sure, absolutely. So I think, especially given the era that we live in, there are mixed experiences. Some applications work, others don't. And occasionally that leaves a bad taste in the owner's mind, the owner of the business. My job here is to make sure that when I'm onboarding a partner, that they're a lifelong partner. So if I'm speaking to somebody that doesn't have a need, doesn't have an issue at hand. They're running a business efficiently, and maybe they're even using a different or a competitive application. I'm not going to step in and say, hey, listen, this is the right idea. It's in my best interest to make sure that they're consistently using our product, that they're having a good experience with our product. And it's, of course, also in their best interest to make sure that they're making the right decision for their own business.
Got it. And so, Esther, one thing we try to do at Spotlight is very similar. We try to take a reasonable approach at what they already have in place, the accountants and bookkeepers that we work with, and we try to match the solution with the app, with the need. So if they're going to go talk to the bank for a loan soon, they're going to need a 5-year forecast, because banks always want to see that. If they have a board meeting coming up, we're going to make sure they have an executive summary. So the needs of your client base have changed based on the solutions that you have to provide over the years since you started with Excel, moved to QBO, moved from QBD to QBO. How do you foresee the changes of client needs will be going into the future?
Well, one thing I can tell you, which is kind of an overarching thing, is that the needs are more immediate. People are not willing to wait till next month or next month end close for the information. They want the information as soon as all the transactions have been conducted. And it's not an unreasonable want. It's not an unreasonable ask, because I can tell you now from my own business, this is August. My company's fiscal year end happens to be August, whereas before, when I was in QuickBooks Desktop, and I'm a pretty good QuickBooks Desktop user, I've been using it since forever. It still took me a while to get my year end ready. My year end will be ready about a week after my fiscal year end, and only because I'm going to be away for a week after the year end. That's the only reason it's going to take a week. So everything is pretty much self-reconciling. I'm up to the minute with every single transaction virtually as soon as it's done, because I'm using Receipt Bank, because everything's going in. Yes, Nick, I am using Receipt Bank. Because I'm using it, and because I'm making use of the bank rules and the bank feeds, and everything is self-reconciling. I mean, I'm my own client. And so the fact is that why should I expect my clients to wait or their bankers to wait when the information is ready and available to be reported on virtually immediately? So that's a big thing.
Definitely, and we see that every day. Going forward is that there's an immediate need. They want to make data-driven decisions right at the time the data is reconciled, which oftentimes is immediately the day of or the week of. So let's move on to our next talking point here. Problems that apps should be solving on a daily basis for your team. So one thing that our CEO, Richard Francis, likes to talk a lot about is taking the time to consider your practice, and he calls it blue sky time. So sitting on the grass, looking up at the sky, and considering where do you want your practice to go. So the problems that the apps should be solving on a daily basis should be in terms of producing the outputs and addressing the client needs that you have, allowing activity to be conducted that cannot be automated, that is revenue generating, but also staying competitive and allowing for the growth of your firm. So Esther, can you tell us about your current app stack and what it allows you to do now that you weren't able to do before?
Sure, it's a good thing I wrote it out before we had this call because I forgot a couple. I thought, oh, wait a second, I'm using that one. I actually opened up my QBO and looked at my apps. I actually have more than this, but these are the main ones. I'm using T-Sheets for the odd time that I'm doing time tracking. I don't do a whole lot of time tracking, but the odd time that I'm time tracking outside the office, I use T-Sheets. I'm using Receipt Bank a lot. I'm using my CRM system is Dubsado, which I absolutely love. I use Zapier to make things talk to each other. I'm using, not a lot because I have other ways of doing this, I'm using Pluto for payments. I use Chronobooks to make sure that I have backups in case things blow up and I need to restore to a previous period. I like the fetching ability of HubDoc, so I use that, but I also use it for some personal stuff as well. I'm using QBO Payments and the QBO mobile app. And I don't know if this really counts as an app, but because I can't receive payments in foreign currency using QBO Payments, I have a foreign exchange company that allows me to accept ACH payments. So that's on top of that. So
Great.
that's my story.
Let me pose this question to you. What is a problem that exists now within your firm which you would love to be solved by a software solution?
I would like to be able to accept foreign currency credit cards.
Got it. Well, hopefully someone in the audience can get out there and start building this. So problems that apps should be solving, I'm going to put this to Nick because this is sort of the space that you live in, you and I both live in. What are some of the pain points that you're seeing with new partners that come through to you, and how do you address those pain points?
Absolutely. So Esther did a great job of touching on this a little earlier. When we talk about efficiencies overall, it's really time that we're looking at. So making sure that this information is getting to you, the accountant, the bookkeeper, in real time, so you can get the books done that day, that week. You're not waiting 3 weeks after the month's end to get everything done and reconciled. So that's certainly the first piece. I think that there's a lot of intangibles when we're talking about time. So time spent reaching out to your clients, waiting for your clients to get back to you. And that kind of highlights something else, which is all the apps that we're going to talk about today help on both sides. It makes your clients' lives easier. It makes the relationship better. It's better client engagement overall. And I think, again, frees up a lot of time for those more value-add, revenue-generating advisory services.
Got it. Yep. And so one thing that we all hear about on a day-to-day basis is that if you have good data in, you'll get good data out. And as Esther was describing earlier, the client need that's becoming more and more prevalent is they want to see their outputs. They want to see their data immediately. They want it to be reconciled immediately. So what ways do you help your clients reconcile and integrate their data on a much faster basis?
Absolutely. Just using ReceiptBank in general opens the door to so many things. And I'll give you a good use case. I had a partner last month who's now offering first of the month reporting. Since the information is coming in real time, since that's getting posted up to QuickBooks Online and matched against the bank feed, she now has time to go back, really dig deep, and offer something out to her clients that she can then charge for. So the more time you have on the front end, the more room you have throughout the month to, again, get creative, to push new services, to grow your client base, whatever your goals might be.
Can I add something to that, please?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm using ReceiptBank for clients, obviously, and I had this prospective client that I was talking with, and I had done the whole value pricing 3-tier option. They could do the platinum, the gold, and the silver. By the way, ultimately they chose the platinum option, and they were based in the States. But before they did that, they were asking me a bunch of questions, which they had every right to do. And one of the questions they were asking was, could we speak to one of your existing clients who's using this? And I didn't have a current client that I could have them speak to that was in exactly that industry. And besides that, my client names are confidential. So I had to ask a particular client that I had on ReceiptBank and other apps in the app stack if they wouldn't mind talking to them. And they said, absolutely, no problem. It was a different industry, but the two of them spoke, and this guy who's so delighted with the whole ReceiptBank, the whole app stack, he basically sold my services for me. And so now I've got this enormous gig, which, I mean, he sold it for me.
Got it. And that goes right by your client. Back for that. What you and Nick are speaking to right now, getting data reconciled, getting data integrated immediately, does flow up into the solution that I provide on a daily basis. So on its face, I work with firms who want to create reports and forecasts on a very fast basis for their clients, to save time, so they're not building it in Excel. But what a lot of people don't think about are, what is your experience with your app stack going to be like after you subscribe? So once you implement the vision within a firm, and let's use advisory as an example, they want to be advisors. The problem that we solve is we save you time on creating your reports and forecasts. But what they don't consider oftentimes is, how am I going to get this deployed across my practice? How am I going to market this to my clients? How am I going to get the reports and forecasts market ready? So it's kind of a two-pronged solution where we provide a tool set, but we also provide a training program that gets you from zero to advisor in 3 to 6 months. So like Nick was talking about before, make sure when you're evaluating your app stack at any level, at any piece of it, no matter what stage of the cloud journey you're on, yes, you want to make sure that the app can achieve the functionality that you have a need for it, that your clients have a need for, but also, are you going to get the support that you need? Is there a team that's waiting to answer technical questions? Are you going to get into a conversation where you have to troubleshoot something and you're going to have to wait a week, 2 weeks for a response? That's not the case with ReceiptBank. That's not the case with Spotlight. And the purpose of that is so that the customers can have a good experience while they're building their future advisory firm. So let's move to the next section here. I do want to address one thing. As we're going, audience, please make sure that you enter your questions in the GoToWebinar panel. We'll be answering questions at the end. Just put your name, where you're from, and what your question is. And Nick and Esther, do you have anything else you'd like to mention on this point?
I would actually, on the Intuit website, apps.com, the apps.com website that's run by Intuit, you'll find that the apps are rated by people who've used the apps and have made use of the tech support, and you'll see from real people how many stars they've given it. So that's a good indicator, not just how many stars have been assigned, but also how many people have rated it. So if you're a little bit concerned about how good an app is and how widely used it's been, take a look at apps.com, take a look at a particular app and see how many people have rated it and how highly they've rated it.
And I want to add one more thing too, Dan. I think just to piggyback on what Esther was saying a little earlier, if you have clients that are posing a problem to you, raising their hand, in her own example, asking her about ReceiptBank and using that client as a reference, that's a major red flag to you as a business owner. I would recommend paying attention to that, finding a solution through a technology service, and I'm not just talking about ReceiptBank or Spotlight, whatever it might be, because the landscape is getting more and more competitive on a yearly basis. So I just wanted to point that out.
That's true. And as the market is getting more and more saturated with reporting apps, with the ReceiptBanks of the world, it's important, like Esther mentioned, to do your research, to talk to someone like Esther who has experience in the ecosystem, to look at the reviews, the star ratings, how many people have rated it. It can give you a good indication of how much business is this app doing? Are they still working out the kinks, or have they been in business for 8 years and they run 30,000 reports a month? Those are the companies, those are the apps that are going to be able to provide a solution and an experience. So definitely agree with all those things. So moving on to the next slide here, the best way to maximize direct and indirect ROI from your app stack. So obviously achieving ROI indirectly has to do with saving time, has to do with eliminating processes that could be spent on other activity, other revenue generating activity, other activity that can't be automated. And that's why we think anything that can be automated should be automated so that you can keep progressing into the firm of the future that we keep talking about. So one way that Spotlight helps save time is they replace the report generation process in Excel with templated reports, with templated forecasts. So the indirect ROI has to do with taking a process that maybe you and your team are spending a week on, 2 weeks on, to create a report for a specific board meeting that might be upcoming. Now that process can be turned into 10 clicks a month once you've set up the template. So Nick, how do you help your client base achieve an indirect ROI?
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to you, it's all about saving time. And we can take that even a step further to say things like Receipt Bank help potentially transition pricing models. So if we're looking at saving time, maybe less hours charged, these are all things that kind of are bundled into this conversation about being a firm of the future, but I digress for a second. The most major thing is just, again, getting that information in real time, not having to key in or re-key in that information on QuickBooks, knowing that everything's done the right way the first time, so you're able to then move that information along to the other applications in your app stack.
Thanks, Nick. And so, Esther, we were speaking earlier about the evolution of your practice's app stack and your own methods. How has an indirect ROI been achieved by your progress within your own cloud journey?
For the longest time, Dan, I kept thinking there's no way I can automate things. My practice is so different because I don't do bookkeeping. I do setups, I do training, I do customizations. Everything is different. And I read that the eMyth Revisited book, and the thing is that there are certain things that are repetitious. Even though every client is different, there are certain steps that are repeated. And so if you take the generic steps in what I do and lay them out and create something, pretend like you're going to do a procedures manual. And as if I'm my own client and I'm saying, okay, Esther, let's do this procedures manual, as if I'm going to tell myself what processes I have to go through. Then if you can lay out the steps of what type of consulting I do, even though each client is unique, then I can say, oh, okay, that goes first. Then I send out the client engagement letter, but before that, they have to fill out the onboarding form. And then I create them as a client. And then I send out this, and then it reminds me to call them. And then I send out the three-tier value pricing thing, and then they choose one, and then it creates the contract. So all of a sudden, there are all these steps. There are all these workflows, and quite a few of them actually can be automated. And so that's what I'm using Dubsado for. I'm actually creating these automated workflows. And those are things that not only weren't automated before, they weren't even listed before. And they were in all these different systems, and they didn't even speak to each other. It was hellish.
Got it. And, you mentioned that when you're operating within your practice, one big part of your business is doing setups and doing deployments of specific solutions to your clients. I would imagine that in any client workflow onboarding to EFK, there's an education phase for each of the clients, teaching them how to maybe read a report or speak the lingo. So maybe can you speak to how are you educating your clients as you guide them through the workflow?
Well, so a number of my clients are larger and they already have their own accounting department, so they're somewhat financially literate already. Having
Got it.
said that, though, the few that are smaller, I do have to train those few in some financial literacy, and specifically how to translate that into the moves in QuickBooks Online, how to get these specific reports that they need.
Got it.
So that is true, and that would be part of the training.
Understand. So the other piece to this is the direct ROI, Esther. So what is a solution that you have within your practice that flows up into a direct revenue stream? So which pieces of your app stack do you deploy as either a value add that you're already monetizing or an upsell?
Well, as part of the packages that I offer my clients, I'm offering them packages that include subscriptions to Chronobooks and Receipt Bank and HubDoc and QuickBooks Online. So I'm getting margins on that. So yeah, so I mean that. But I think the biggest revenue driver, frankly, is the fact that I'm offering them these platinum, gold, and silver things, and I'm also offering them something I never did before, which were these follow-up curations and checkups, which I never had the time to do before, and it's easy peasy because I never even have to leave my office to do checkups, and that's extra revenue stream right there.
Got it. That seems like a really effective way to keep your services top of mind and engaged with the client. So Nick, let me ask you this. The Receipt Bank solution, how have you seen it in your client base flow up into a direct ROI within the accounting firms and bookkeeping firms that you work with?
Absolutely. So Esther's example represents what I would call kind of an ideal use case of implementing Receipt Bank and making money on it. Building out not only value pricing, but a value chain that moves people up each level, having the application cost built in, so you're making, as she pointed out, margins on every new client. With that being said, I certainly have clients that are on an hourly pricing model that will charge the cost of Receipt Bank directly back to their client. Since it's cheaper for the accountant and bookkeeper to subscribe, easy to rebill that at a discounted rate back to the end user.
Got it. That is a good point. So one way that Spotlight achieves a direct ROI for our client is specifically our forecasting tool. So the proposition of our forecasting tool is that historically, when a forecast has been built in Excel, it's taken a team of people a week to generate it, and because of that, it has a very high dollar market value. So I've seen firms charge $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 for a single forecast. The proposition behind our tool is that now you can create a budget, you can create a forecast in about an hour for each of your clients. So now, while it retains its high dollar market value, it also has a lowered human cost. So you can achieve an ROI by deploying this solution, not only as a value add, but a good upsell opportunity to each of your clients. And there are a few ways by which we recommend you deploy monetization strategies around this. So one way is that you offer an advisory session to each of your clients for free. You go in, you do the analysis, you do the work, and then once they see the use case and that they will get the value out of it, then you introduce them to the pricing structure. And the other way is what Esther was mentioning just a moment ago, is that you create a tiered structure, platinum, silver, gold, and you get them to the premium plan, which is, you know, a forecast and a management report from maybe just a single dashboard, and then they'd want a management report to dig a little deeper and look at the health of their company, and then finally make decisions based on projected future data instead of just historical data. So unless Esther and Nick, if you have anything else you want to mention on this talking point.
I do, actually. One other thing, Dan, and that is that as the average QBO user size grows, and it is growing, you'll find that there are companies or end users with multiple companies using QBO, and they have a need for consolidation.
Got it.
And, you know, one of my niches is multiple companies, multiple currencies, QBO in different countries, that kind of thing. And so I played around with Spotlight, and I was pretty wowed by what Spotlight can do with the different companies, with the different home currencies, and just adding them together and choosing your reporting currency. So I look forward to using that.
Definitely, yeah. Doing a national consolidation with multi-currency is one of our strong points. It's a feature we built into the tool since our inception 8 years ago. And it does save a lot of time and helps you achieve the indirect and direct ROI. That aside from that, just with our standard bundle of reports, forecasts, dashboards, you can consolidate up to 50 entities, right? So most use cases within any practice of consolidation, running the eliminations within the consolidation, can be addressed just with the standard bundle of our tool. So guys, we have to move on to the next slide here. We just have a couple of minutes left before the Q&A. So Nick, unless you have some real quick you want to say on this, I'm going to move on.
All set.
All set. All right. So easy ways to create efficient workflows for your client data. So creating an app stack with direct integrations, staying ahead of your client needs, and translating the data that oftentimes no one is even looking at into increased bandwidth within your practice. So let's start with Nick on this one. So how do you help your clients create efficient workflows for their client data?
Absolutely. So it's really all about working smarter, not harder. Being able to gather that information from the client. And again, it's whether it's just downloading that information directly off ReceiptBank into a spreadsheet, getting it into QuickBooks, you know, moving it on to something like Bill.com, Gusto, whatever it might be. It's really the front end of any practice in my mind in terms of gathering that information, extracting the data, and formatting it the right way the first time.
Got it. And so what would you recommend for a new partner of yours that's coming on board who is maybe transferring all their data directly from Excel? They're still doing an entire Excel practice. They have the shoebox full of receipts. Someone that's at the very first step of their cloud journey, what would you recommend for them to start with in creating an efficient workflow?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would never recommend to any potential partner to get all of that done overnight all at once. We want to make sure that things are broken out, and I think our onboarding program really speaks to that. You know, who are your top 10 most difficult clients, problem clients, whatever you might want to call them? How can we get them onboarded? Making sure that ReceiptBank is implemented both internally, scanning those documents in just in case that shoebox does arrive at the office, and also that the clients understand that it really is just as easy as taking a picture with your phone. I've got some incredible stories about my own partners going from 15 clients to 60 clients in 1 year. So I think that strategizing accordingly is a big piece there.
Thanks, Nick. Esther, we have just a minute or two left here on this subject. Do you have any recommendations for newly transitioning accounting firms in creating efficient workflows?
Yeah, just keep in mind, back in the early days before QBO really took hold, when there was just the marketplace of apps that work with desktop, there was an acronym NED2, which is never enter data twice. So if you keep that in mind and look at the apps that are available and look at the ones that are well rated, and I would also suggest looking at the Facebook groups, because you can't get better advice than people that are using these apps to their best advantage, whether it's the workflow watering hole or accounting pros who like Zapier or the Bookkeeper's Corner group or the Successful Bookkeeper. I would say join these groups and ask the questions or see if the questions have already been asked. And these people are such givers, and people want to share their experience, and they'll tell you the straight poop. What's the best CRM? And maybe the best CRM for person A isn't the right CRM for person B, because it all depends on how their minds work, how their brains work. But at least you'll get a good starting point.
Got it. Thanks. So now we're going to move into the most exciting piece of the webinar here, the Q&A. So this first question is for Esther. This is a question from Jeff in New Jersey. Can Esther please repeat the list of apps she mentioned earlier?
Yes, Jeff in New Jersey, yes. I'm using T-Sheets, HubDoc, Receipt Bank, Dubsado, that's spelled D like in David, U, B as in boy, S like in Sam, A, D as in David, O, that's for my CRM system. Zapier, I'm using Plooto, Plooto, Chronobooks, the QBO mobile app, and QBO payments. And then on top of that, I have a foreign exchange company that lets me accept US dollars via ACH. Don't forget, I live in Canada and we don't have US ACH here.
Got it. So this question can be answered by either of you. This is a question from Christy in Florida. I believe I need to integrate about 2 to 3 apps in my firm to be totally efficient, but I'm worried it might be a little too much to roll out for my whole team. What is the recommended way to deploy or introduce new apps? I'm aware there will be a lot to learn as we get stuck into using each app and training. I don't want my team to feel overwhelmed.
Sure, so I can start here happily. It's really about showing your team and your clients how easy it can be. So my example with Receipt Bank always is, if a new client walks in the door, take out your phone, snap a picture of a receipt, and ask them if they can do that. Now, I would hope most people can take a picture of a receipt or pretty much anything, so it seems to stick pretty well. And again, really look at your practice. What are those needs? And make sure that you're filling things in the right order. What's at the front end of that process? What's at the back end? Is it the QuickBooks Online transition that you might need, or is it maybe something like Spotlight or Receipt Bank?
I also found that Receipt Bank in particular has really good video training.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, guys. Okay, now a question from Ian in California. What are some good apps to solve internal communication issues, especially between staff who are spread across the country? We need a solution that reduces the amount of emails, and we get a way to share and ask information quickly. So maybe we'll start with Esther on this one. Should I repeat the question?
No, I heard the question. You want to repeat it in case somebody else didn't hear it?
Sure. What are some good apps to solve internal communication issues, especially between staff who are spread across the country? We need a solution that reduces the amount of emails we get and a way to share and ask information quickly.
Well, a lot of people use Slack. And what's the Microsoft version of that? It's going to drive me nuts now.
I know Google Chat is another one that people seem to like.
What is?
G Chat, the letter G and then chat.
Okay. And I just, Microsoft version of, is it called Work or something of Slack? Hang on. It's called Teams, Microsoft Teams.
Got it.
Okay, that's a competitor to Slack, and that's free if you have Office 365. So
Okay.
a lot of people love those.
Yeah, we use Slack over at Spotlight, and we all love it. So definitely, seems like there's something of a consensus there.
Yeah.
Nick, anything to add to this?
We use Slack internally as well, and we love it. Nothing but good things to say about it.
Nothing but good stuff. Okay, so now that's all the questions we have. Let's talk about highlights. What we talked about today is technology and automation is at the forefront of your success. So we talked about how to choose and reevaluate apps for your accounting practice. More than ever, evaluating apps is essential for workflow, for efficiency, for creating revenue upsells and new revenue streams, for creating direct and indirect ROIs, and for maximizing the experience for your clients. Choosing the right tech stack is very important. You can lean on the expertise of the likes of Esther. Nick and I are both spend most of our days onboarding new clients and consulting with new partners. And if you spend less time doing manual process and more being a trusted advisor or doing revenue generating activity or non-automatable activity, that is always a positive because it's moving you towards the future and moving you towards the progressive firm that you will be in 5 or 10 years. So having said that, our CEO at Spotlight, Richard Francis, has written a book about transforming your practice into an advisory practice. You can get insights about how to create a value add for your company, how to deploy an advisory strategy, how to monetize KPIs, cash flow, forecasting, and how to scale advisory across your practice. It talks about blue sky time, the vision for your firm, creating the client base that you want, and just developing the advisory practice that you want and need going into the future. So now it's going to be a quick opportunity for each of us to plug ourselves and our social media platforms. Having said that, just really quick, let me mention, if you'd like a copy of the ebook, contact us at transform@spotlightreporting.com. Contact me at dshively@spotlightreporting.com, or you can make a request on our website. So you can follow me. I'm on Twitter at AdvisoryDaniel. You can also find me on LinkedIn at just Daniel Shively. Nick, do you have a social media presence you'd like to plug?
Yeah, absolutely. So Twitter handle is Nick_receipts. Always best to reach me by email, so it's first.last@receiptbank.com. And happy to share my cell phone number as well if any of you want to text me or give me a phone call. It's 202-339-2643.
And Esther, anything you'd like to plug here?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to do it in the chat, but I can't seem to send it to everybody. So my Twitter handle is at Esther Friedberg. That's ESTHERFRIEDBERG. And my phone number is 416-410-0750. Love to hear from you.
Got it. And we do have just a couple of minutes here, and I did get one additional question come in. This first one is for Nick here. Question from Gabriella in Toronto. I'm using HubDoc right now. How different is ReceiptBank from HubDoc?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I've always seen it is HubDoc started with bank fetching. To their credit, it is an incredibly difficult technology to get right. We've been working on it for some time, and it's still in beta testing. On the other hand, ReceiptBank has always been, from the original document being the receipt or invoice out, we've got the best optical character recognition, or the most accurate technology available. User interface seems to be preferred as well, fastest turnaround time. In my mind, if you're looking for a solution for receipts and invoices, the answer is ReceiptBank. If you're looking to gather the bank statement from the bank, HubDoc is the answer for today.
May I add to that? Because I use them both.
Yep.
Okay, so ReceiptBank is better when it comes to multiple currencies. And if you have, let's say, multiple payment methods, let's say you have more than one credit card account, ReceiptBank is better. HubDoc is better at picking up different, as Nick said, different statements from various providers.
Got it. I also have a question in New York. Can you please list those Facebook groups again more slowly?
I will, yes. Okay, and I'm going to actually, I have a longer list, so I'll read them all. Workflow Watering Hole, QBO Connector. I don't know if this is a private one or not, so you'll just have to try. Accounting Pros Who Love Zapier. Get Intuit, as in the company Intuit. QBHQ. Bookkeepers Corner Group, The Successful Bookkeeper, USA Bookkeeping, and Quinte, that's Quin, like in Norman TE, Quinte in the Cloud.
Got it. Okay, and so last question here, a question from Allison. Our team is finding Asana to be continuously less effective for accountability on tasks, and that the organization of project steps could be done on a more basic application. Have you experienced anyone who left Asana for a different, better app, and what was it?
I've heard, I know people have used Asana. I don't have experience to answer that question.
Sure. Anything on this point?
We use Asana internally as well, so I'm not sure what other players they are in that space specifically.
Got it. Okay. Well,
you might try, I don't know exactly what particular tasks you're using, but you might try Aero Workflow, AERO, Aero Workflow. That's specifically for accounting practices.
okay, Aero Workflow. Got it. So just wrapping up here, thank you everybody for coming to the webinar. We hope you got a lot out of it. We hope you have more information on how you can evaluate your app stack in your modern practice. Esther, is there anything you'd like to say before we leave?
No, just thank you for having me. Thank you, Dan, and great to see you again, Nick. And thank you everybody for listening to me prattle on and on.
Thanks a lot, Esther. And Nick, any parting words here?
No, I really appreciate it. Anyone listening, please feel free to reach out, even if it's a conversation not directly regarding Receipt Bank. I'm more than happy to just talk things out and hopefully help any way I can.
Got it. Well, thank you everybody for attending. If you would like to download the eTransform book written by Richard Francis, the CEO of Spotlight Reporting, please contact me. Please log on to the website. You can make a request there or transform@spotlightreporting.com. Thank you, everybody, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.